Morning. I hope you were able to be with us on Sunday when Tony was sharing from the book of Nehemiah in that last bit of the story we've been looking at of how the exiles returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the city, and at this last stage they were rebuilding the city walls. I just want to dig a little bit deeper into some of that account this morning from Nehemiah chapter 4, where basically where they're at, they've got kind of halfway through. They've built the wall to half height, but they're facing some opposition and it's becoming a bit of a struggle. As we hear in chapter 4 from verse 10, where it says, "Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, 'The strength of the labourers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall.'" I wonder if any of us can relate to that. You know, when we're working on something, we're trying to push through with the challenges of life, and it feels our strength is giving out, or perhaps the strength of those who are working with us is giving out. And all we can see is just the rubble from the past things that have gone on that's just getting in the way and making it seem impossible to continue. But more than that, carrying on in verse 11, it says, "Also our enemies said, 'Before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work.' Then the Jews who live near them came and told us 10 times over, 'Wherever you turn, they will attack us.'" Can we relate to that maybe, where it just seems like wherever we turn, things are against us? There is always something that just sneaks up on us and takes us out wherever we turn. What's the response to that? Well, Nehemiah does this from verse 13. "Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears and bows." So step one, he positions these warriors who are ready to defend the families in those vulnerable places. What's the equivalent of that for us today? Because I'm presuming our struggles aren't a physical battle in a sense, but what we're facing is a spiritual battle. And so for me, positioning those warriors is about positioning prayer that's covering wherever our vulnerable points are, wherever we see the vulnerable points in our lives, or wherever we see the vulnerable points in our communities. Let's post prayer in those places for that protection so that the people can continue to work. But then there's another thing he does. Verse 14, "After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials and the rest of the people, 'Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes.'" I love that expression, "don't be afraid of them." I don't know about you, but one of the hardest things to do when you're feeling afraid is to be told, "Don't be afraid." How do I do that? Well, it's by remembering the Lord who is great and awesome. Whatever struggle we're facing, remember the Lord who is great and awesome, because it's him who fights the battles, it's him who wins the battles. So rather than looking at our weariness, at the weariness of those around us, at the rubble that's getting in the way, let's look to God, let's remember who he is and find our encouragement and our courage from there. But there's one more thing later on. They carry on in this manner and are managing to rebuild, but they stay alert even though their enemies, it said verse 15, "When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our work." So the enemies have kind of backed off, but still they keep an alertness. And in verse 19 to 20, he says, "Then I said to the nobles, the officials and the rest of the people, 'The work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. Our God will fight for us.'" I think now more than ever we can perhaps relate to that feeling of the work being extensive and spread out during this time when we're not gathered together in the same way. We can feel as though we're on our own in our little bit of the world doing our thing. And so that listening out for the sound of the trumpet that calls us to where we are needed, that calls us to where the battle is so crucial. Whether that trumpet call comes in the form of hearing people's cries for help, that we need to go to that place and bring support there, or whether that trumpet cry comes as a word from God, that sense that God is calling us into a particular place to fight for him, to see him win the battle. So if you feel like you're getting weary, those around you are getting weary, if you feel like the pile of rubble is too great for you to plough through to be able to rebuild your wall, can I encourage you, position your warriors in prayer. Pray into those difficult areas. Remember the might and the strength of God, and listen out for that trumpet call from each other to go and support and encourage wherever the battle's taking place. Have a great week.